Hi, everybody. Welcome to the table. It's me, Anton. I'm here with ComicCon.com, and I am super excited today. I get to talk to none other than Steve Jackson. Yes, the Steve Jackson. He's joined me today. He's agreed to come and sit down and talk about all sorts of fun things. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much for joining me, sir. How are you?
I am fine. I'm flattered and I'm fine.
I am incredibly excited to get a chance to sit down with you and just kind of talk about all of the things that have been a part of my life since I was as far back, honestly, as I can remember. I grew up in gaming, and from Munchkin to GURPS, to Illuminati. Car Wars, all of these things have been such an integral part of my very core, my DNA. And it is kind of made me the person that I am, which I hope is a decent person. And I can kind of, a lot of my early and fondest memories were from people in the gaming community who kind of took a little kid me in. My parents would drop me off at a comic shop, and I'm maybe 10 or 11 years old, hobbling around on my crutches. I'm a full-time wheelchair user, and but at the time I was still up on my loft strands, and I was having a lot of time, difficulties kind of acclimating and trying to figure out where my space was in the world. And they were pull up a bar stool to the big felt covered tables, and they'd bust out little micro machine cars or matchbox cars and these little zines. And I have a whole shelf of zines next to my desk, and they would be like, "You got wheels, these have wheels, they're awesome, you're awesome, like, let's get into it." And
Yes.
it was always so much fun for me because you made games, that were not intimidating. They were these small games that, the scope of some maybe larger scale things were always very, as a kid, you kind of look at this vast landscape and you're like, oh my goodness, like how am I going to learn all of this? I'm having a hard enough time figuring out algebra. How am I supposed to figure this out just to have fun? But I always remember, like, with Munchkin and with Car Wars, even Tunnels and Trolls, right? Because I'm gonna give you my age now, but going back, like, I remember looking at it and feeling like it was welcoming. How did I have done some research, but could you tell our wonderful viewers at home, like, how'd you get your start? Where, how did you come to gaming? What was kind of your intro into the world?
It was when I was in college. There hadn't been any gaming other than chess in my high school. Of course, this was a long time ago. This was 70s, and the people in my dorm were heavily into playing Risk, and some of them also played hex war games. And this was a new world, and I jumped at it.
I mean, that's so much fun. Like, I remember being really intimidated by the hex war games, right? And then seeing all the miniatures and everything's immaculately painted, and I'm still trying to figure out how to write in cursive, and what, it's just seeing the artistry that had gone into it. In college, I mean, that's a cool time to kind of come into it. What were you studying? Like, what was your your major?
It was a double major in biology and political science, which I know is a weird combo, but we're allowed weird.
Yeah, we are allowed weird, and that's a fun combination. Life and how life relates to each other. And I can see how poli sci kind of
Yeah.
plays in the biology aspect. That makes total sense to me. That's a ton of fun.
Well, it wasn't because I saw some deep combination between the two. I entered as a bio major. First semester junior year, I took a poli sci course just because of distribution requirements, and it was like, oh, I had no idea this was what political science was. How many more of these can I transfer into? And uh, it was fascinating because, as you say, it's how we relate to each other. And I ended up taking a double major because for my last 2 years, the poli sci courses were mostly more interesting than the upper level bio courses, which tended to be heavy on biochemistry. And I'm a naturalist, not a test tube guy.
Fair enough. I mean,
I want to watch the frog jump, not dissect him.
just see him in his environment. That makes
Yeah.
sense. That's after my own heart. I completely understand that sensibility. And so you see you have all these friends. They're playing hex-based war games, and you're like, I could make this. How does one? I mean, my move into game design took me probably 20 years from being, from fan to starting to work on the very fringes of game design. And I'm lucky enough to be in a position where I'm a games director now. But, at the time, I never thought in a million years I would understand how to build games. How did you make the transition from like, oh, we're all playing to I'm going to make my own stuff?
Completely by accident. I was out of college and into law school, which I wasn't really enjoying, and I ended up not taking a law degree. One of the displacement activities that I engaged in, instead of doing my homework, was reading the school paper, which was professional interest because I was a student journalist and I've always been interested specifically in the newspaper form, which is dying, and that's bad. But I read it cover to cover. I read the want ads. One of the help wanted ads was looking for a quote zine editor unquote. Now this was very late 70s by then, and the word zine was not on everybody's lips. It was private property of the geeks, and specifically the science fiction geeks. So I was like, okay, this is a coded message and it was meant for me. And I answered the job posting. And I did not get it. I was overqualified. Um, the owner of the company, which was Metagaming, was looking for an editor for his in-house zine. But when he found somebody who had editing experience and played games, he contracted me to do game development. And not very much after that came an assignment to actually design a game, and that was Ogre. And sometimes the rest seems like it was just a slide downhill from there. Everything progressed.
I love that you speak about zines. I in the last probably 5 years, I do a lot of work with Outland Entertainment. That's where I'm privileged enough to be the game director there now. I started as just a kind of a low level designer working on zines,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a lot of let's go back to the stapled black and white. Let's talk about let's talk about kind of a small digestible gaming format that I honestly grew up with your stuff and it being polybagged and able to you could pick it up and play it and you could hand it to your friends and it wasn't like and I love my gargantuan tomes. I'm in an office with there's shelves everywhere here with books, just gaming books are everywhere around me, but like the shelf that sits above my desk is my zine shelf, and that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of where I return to and where I draw a lot of my inspiration from, and it really comes from those early zines, me being able to carry them around, roll it up and stick it in my pocket or throw it in my backpack and get where I was going. So that it makes me happy to hear that it oft in life we wonder if we're on the right path, but if you are where you are and have done so much that has made so many people so happy and connected so many lives through the wonderful things that you've created, it at least gives me hope that maybe I'm in the early cobblestones to go slipping slowly down said hill.
Do it. Do it.
That's what I'm here for, man. I'm very excited about it. And Munchkin. How did Munchkin come into being? I mean, what a fun, amazing game! I remember playing it the first time. There was a girl at the gaming shop. It was a comic shop. We played games in the back, and she didn't really want to get into D&D, and she actually purchased the first box of Munchkin that had come into the shop and busted it out. And we all started playing it, and then it just became the regular thing that we did. And it was such a piece of formative. We have all the sets and pulled all of the different pieces together. But I mean, where did that come from? Like, how did you conceive of it and just bring it into the world?
It was a simple concept, and I had no idea that it was going to be what it became. I wanted to do a little card game that would, to use the Britishism, to take the piss out of D&D. I wanted to do a parody of bad role playing, where you're all about killing stuff and grabbing stuff and leveling up, and there isn't any real role playing at all. So I drafted a little card game, and a lot of the cards for the first version were made up literally on an airplane to the convention in Arizona. I was riding with my partner, and she and I were brainstorming. And when my hand cramped from writing down ideas on blank cards, she took over, and her writing was much better than mine, so that was good. And we got the game into playable form in time for the convention, and the people who were invited to play test it refused to quit. They said, no, we like this game. So it was published, and we did our usual optimistic print run at 5,000, and Monica goes, that's not enough, and they sold out instantly. So we went back to print for 10,000, and Monica says, that's still not enough, and they sold out instantly. She was often right.
That's
and
awesome.
And it was just one thing after another. The whole gimmick of items that give rules was an impulse. We were doing a Munchkin t-shirt, and I just said, why don't we write a special rule that anybody who's wearing the t-shirt gets a bonus? And people went wild about that. And now it's a Munchkin thing.
That's so cool, man. I love it so much. And it's such a fun game. I mean, it all of the different editions. I'm sure between myself, my gaming group, we are spread all over the world now. We meet Tuesday nights. I love my table. We meet on Zoom and have for years because they're in LA or they're over in Europe. And everybody's everywhere, and we still get together and play. And that's everybody has to have a set now at the house so we can play over Zoom because we can't play on the virtual tabletop. It's one of the the small things that when we get together and actually have a chance to be in each other's presence, we always have a deck on us, at least one of them.
You're lucky to have been able to keep your group together. A lot of people of my generation did not make the jump to virtual, and their groups scattered, and they have never quite found a replacement for the people they learned with.
I think we got really lucky because we wanted to play, and we were doing it over like landline phone call, and then and we'd have the map drawn, like Photoshop documents and a map, and in like like a virtual teleprompt thing. We would buy, these CDs that they would sell at like Gen Con or Dragon Con. We'd pick something up and we would, whatever we were trying to do, but it was just because we all moved, whether it was for production reasons, somebody's working on this show or somebody's drawing this comic or somebody's here, somebody's there. And it was, we've always come back to the table. It's such a, as a kid with a disability, right now I'm a full-time wheelchair user, but as someone who could never like throw the ball or run around in the grass or whatever, the gaming table's always kind of been that grand equalizer. And I've been really lucky that, the men and women who play at my table, very talented, very wonderful people, but we've always just kind of come together. That's been our thing. And I never overlook how blessed I am to sit and be able to still play, even if, like we're talking now over the screen. It's Tuesday, it's game night for me. So they're all in LA. They happen to, everybody's in LA right now for different reasons. So they'll all call in at 10 o'clock. We'll all be on a Zoom call, and we'll play until 1 o'clock my time, and then I'll go to sleep for 2 hours and wake up and start doing work stuff because I'm East Coast. But it's, you don't miss it. That's our friend time. We make a point.
That's all very neat, except the 2 hours of sleep. I can't pull that off anymore. But
I'm starting to feel it. I promise you. I'm getting up there, and I'm starting to feel it myself. But it is the time that I get with my friends, so I try to make it work.
talking about the online play, have you looked at the digital Munchkin that Direwolf did?
I have. I've seen it. We haven't played it yet, but I did look at it.
They
And it
did a
is.
good job.
Oh,
They understood the material, and it's not just schlock. I was real pleased.
well, if you're pleased, then I'm add that to the notes right now and tell everybody tonight. I'm literally putting it in my notebook. That's awesome. Okay, well, then we will for sure check it out, and I will report back in email or in person.
Please.
And so the big Munchkin, you guys just finished the set, the big Kickstarter that did well.
Mm.
Very exciting. Get the whole box, the whole shebang was all available in that. And I mean, everybody that I've heard who's backed it has been really excited about it. So I mean, that's super cool. And now we've got CARnage 2, more Car Wars stuff coming out.
Yeah, it's an STL project for 3D print, and it ends in less than 2 days. So if you're into 3D print and if you're into Car Wars, which is like a Venn diagram, but if you are into both those things, Google CARnage 2 and check it out.
That's awesome. Fun story about weirdly the Venn diagram between 3D printing and Car Wars. I have
Mm-hmm.
friends who run a con in Springfield, Missouri called Tremendicon, and the Dave Stanfield, who's the guy that runs the convention. The first time we were on a call together and we were talking, he was like, "So what do you play?" And you know how, as an adult, sometimes it's really difficult to make friends, and like you're trying to feel the other person out, and you just make sure everybody's cool. And I was like, well, I like this, Car Wars, this, that. And he goes, wait, back up. And then he was telling me how he had, people had gotten designers and were building out the models and the terrain and like they were playing. And I'm like, oh man, let me show you my old stuff. And like, so
Oh,
we're
yeah.
going back and forth. And it was immediately like, took me back to my childhood and being able to like share that experience and like then we were cool with each other. And then I worked with them on some stuff, and we've been friends for 2 or 3 years now, but it's all because of the game. So you guys listening at home, jump on this. It's important.
The bigger lesson is go to conventions. That's where your people hang out.
It's true. It's wherever, and talk to the people sitting at the tables who nobody's talking to. See who wants to play. It's always important to invite somebody to play the game. Sometimes it's difficult. I took a friend's kid to her first convention this past weekend. It was a local show, small show. Those are still fun. But she wanted, for her birthday, she requested that I essentially show up and chaperone her around a comic convention. She didn't want her dad to do it, didn't want her mom to do it. She was like, I want Anton to do it. So myself, my mother-in-law, who's an amazing human being, her mom, also amazing person, and Brooke, her name was Brooke. We went around this convention, and she went to every booth, and we had conversations about how it's okay to talk to people who are cosplaying because they want your feedback. If you're excited about their costume, they want to hear that you're excited. It's okay to say you look really cool in your costume. We had those fun,
Yes.
but it was great because she's 12 and just trying to kind of find her space in the nerd kind of sector. And as somebody who was able to look back, it gave me real big familial feelings to be like, all right, little one, let's rock and roll. And like, we had a blast.
Hi, Brooke. It sounds like you're one of us. Welcome.
Check that out. I will definitely send this to her. That's amazing. Yeah, she is one of us, and she's a super smart kid. And I texted my wife and I was like, I'm having a really good time. This is pretty awesome. And she was like, "How are you now?" And like it was pretty great. My wife was excited that I was able to go and kind of get
Yes.
to have that experience. So
Yeah. That's a real good point about cosplayers wanting your feedback. They really do. At Dragon Con a couple of years ago, I was riding up in the elevator, and one of the people in the elevator was a woman doing Hellboy.
ooh,
And it was awesome. And I just stomped down my shyness and said, "May I take a picture?" And she allowed it. And I've still got that photo. I mean, it's just because the work that she had done on her face and the horns and the whole thing, it was magnificent.
That's fantastic. It's cool because like you're sort of one of our role models, and so for you to just immediately out the gate ask for consent so you can take a picture, you're not being like you're the man. This is the reason we look up to you. It's because people like you make this community a safe space for us to exist in. For that, we're always eternally grateful. I'm getting
We're always trying.
that's all you can do. All you can do is try. Eric's pinging me for 5-minute warning. Before we go, I do want to bring this up. It's my mother-in-law. I've already mentioned her. She's super rad. Her name's Shelly. She's awesome. She's a big Lego fan, and I've heard that you are also a big fan of Legos. Is it the pirate sets or the train sets? Because I've heard dueling information, or is it both?
Both are true.
Awesome.
I actually did a game, not to sell, but just to give away. It's called Evil Stevie's Pirate Game. You can find it on the net. But what you find on the net is an old version, so don't go look now. Make a note and give it a month or so because updating is happening.
Ooh.
And I'm going to run the game at Brick Rodeo in Austin, and it's about putting the pirate ships on the rug and pushing them around, going R, and shooting at the other players.
I
Well,
absolutely.
technically at their ships.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So Shelly is currently working on a museum piece. She did yellow mushroom cup mushrooms on like a log, and then she made it on
Mhm.
this really cool frame, and then it's like wire mounted for the museum. And they're doing a whole botanical thing in the local museum because she's part of the brick builders and she's in all the different brick clubs. She actually went with me day one when the D&D castle dropped at the local Lego store, and we got
Mhm.
coffee and sat outside, and we're the only people for like 3 hours until the store opened. And we just sat there and talked about gaming, and like she's really getting into gaming now, and like she's very excited about it. Where I'm going to run her first D&D game for her and my wife's sister, like where everybody's going to get together and
Oh,
play. So it'll be the first family game we run together, which is fun. But she's really a big Lego fan, and when I found out that you were a fan of Lego, or at least I was told you were a fan of Lego, I was like, "Oh, I gotta ask him. I'll be
oh,
remiss if I don't." So,
absolutely a fan. And trains is most of what I do now. I'm by no means the best builder in our circle, but I try to keep up. I'm always learning new tricks. And I'm especially into buildings and landscape and things like that because
that's
it's like the train models that some of these guys do is amazing,
yeah.
and they're like jewels that need a setting, and I seem to be the guy who builds the setting. That's okay.
Do you know there's always a need for that. I think that's super important. And I am also, I will freely admit this, will be emailing you in the next month or so to get these new rules for Evil Stevie's to see what the updates are going to be because I'm really excited about that.
Absolutely. It's much easier to play than the version online.
Oh, that's
Um, because what's online was like the 1.1 version, and it has all kinds of rules in it that were fun to write, but are essentially unplayable.
that's fair. That's totally fair. Well, Steve, I mean, this has been an absolute honor. It feels like getting to talk to a childhood icon. This is Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with
Well,
me, share this
thank,
experience with me. It's
thank you
amazing.
for having me, and I hope we can meet at a con one of these days and hang some.
For sure, for sure. I will let you know where I am. I will keep in touch. And if there's any new news, make sure I get the press and we'll sit down and talk again soon.
Oh yeah, I hope to be able to make some more news. We'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. This has been the incomparable, amazing, and always talented Steve Jackson, one of my personal heroes. I love you all. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Goodbye, people.